Alright, I've got two major points to talk about with Madoka Magica, so let's get right into it. Spoiler warning for the anime and also the sequel film Rebellion. Here we go. In Puella Magi Madoka Magica, 5 girls are made an offer that's too tempting to refuse. Make a contract with a delightful bunny cat and receive a wish in exchange for assuming the responsibility and capability of doing battle with witches who prey on humanity. Due to its dark tones and subject matter, Madoka Magica was and is considered a subversive masterpiece, which few anime have equaled since. But how deeply did you consider Madoka Magica? And what, if anything, did observing Madoka's struggle with the decision of whether to become a magical girl teach you about the decisions you might be struggling with yourself? The main characters, excepting Homura, all die at least once over the course of the series. These deaths are invariably tragic. Mami, having finally found that she does not have to face her dark and dangerous life alone anymore, perishes while never having the chance to enjoy her newfound friendships. Sayaka commits wholeheartedly to the selflessness she inadvertently got herself into with her wish and succumbs to despair. Kyoko is perhaps unwilling to continue living on Kyubei's terms as part of a cycle of magical girls and witches. She gives her life to destroy Sayaka's witch rather than succumb to despair herself. Homura was on the verge of giving up after 12 years of time traveling through the same month when Madoka makes her final decision. Madoka ends up going through with an obvious self-sacrifice, but manages to do it so hard she changes the universe for the better. You may have noticed, the show's plot constructs a narrative endorsing self-sacrifice. When Madoka is presented with all the facts and makes her decision, she still winds up happily wishing herself out of existence. So even though she prevents all witches everywhere, she destroys herself as she existed up until that point to do it. This is what I'm getting at. Madoka Magica contains an idea about morality, and that idea is, it is proper and right and suitable to perish for your goals. But that very notion is abhorrent. In order to even have goals, you need to be alive. A rock does not have hopes, dreams, or aspirations. It's a goddamn rock. The idea of values does not exist in a vacuum. There are no values without somebody able to evaluate things for their ability to serve some purpose. If you're of a religious bent, then you evaluate the closeness with which any activity, object, or action approaches what you understand to be God's plan. If you're sane, then you evaluate the usefulness of concretes to whatever earthly purpose you've selected. If your moral ideal demands you perish for it, then that ideal is demanding that for that which you value, you sacrifice that which makes value possible. Your life, you who are listening, is what makes you able to consider whether something has value. Because it makes value possible, nothing can rightly be more precious to you than that which makes life possible. So the deaths of Mami and Sayaka are tragic accidents brought about by a mishap and an error of judgment, respectively. Homura made her desire to save Madoka herself a value greater than the ones that supported her life. Kyoko decided that, in light of newly discovered information, life as a magical girl wasn't worth living, and gave her life to put whatever remained of Sayaka out of her misery. Madoka achieved her goal, but I'll let you decide. Was becoming a magical girl to save all other magical girls from their fate a self-destructive sacrifice, or a self-affirming value, without which life would have been unbearable? You, dear viewer, live in a world governed by cause and effect. There are entities which behave according to their nature as regularly and absolutely as a piece of code. Anytime you encounter something that does not make sense, you're encountering a gap in your understanding, not a spooky phenomena of the unexplainable. We might rightly expect the mechanics of what goes on in Madoka Magica to be similar. After all, Kyubei talks a big game about how the incubators are raising tween-aged girls as livestock to avert the heat death of the universe by harnessing the emotional power to counteract entropy. You might reasonably expect the generation of wishes to be an as-yet unexplained process open to investigation. You could reasonably expect this. right up until the point when Kyubey mentions offhandedly that wishes are things which do not exist in reality, and that it follows that generating them would have disastrous consequences. This particular bombshell is especially shocking. Kyubey has just implied that granting wishes subverts cause and effect. Kyubey did not save Mami's life or fix Kyosuke's hands. He literally subverted the principles of metaphysics in order to replace an "it is" with an "I wish." This isn't explicable magic systems like alchemy in Full Metal Alchemist. This isn't even the nebulously defined magical causes and effects of Avatar: The Last Airbender or Harry Potter. This is quite literally a case of turning metaphysics upside down. Allow me to explain. Before you can begin a scientific inquiry into how an entity behaves, you necessarily start out with some assumptions. You assume that the entity you're inquiring after has a particular set of characteristics, that these characteristics, while they might be highly situational, are absolute and do not change. There is no switch which, when pulled, will turn a rock into an orange. There is a geological process called petrification, which might conceivably turn an orange into a rock, but the orange, the rock, and all the entities involved in a process of petrification are what they are and will behave according to their nature. The entities involved in a process of petrification will turn an orange into a rock. They will not turn a bar of zinc into a bouquet of flowers. Don't think of this as some bizarre or remote abstraction either. You operate on these assumptions for survival in your everyday life. By using a motor vehicle to get to work, you implicitly express a recognition of the truth that a combustion engine exists and behaves according to its nature. You observe this fact of reality using your senses, and you've integrated it with other concepts you work with regularly. You have a consciousness, and that is the faculty of observing reality and the real entities in it which behave according to their nature. Now let's suppose this goddamn bunny cat told you that it was able, somehow, to force the content of your consciousness to change reality. Which is to say, surprise girl, reality is whatever a consciousness wishes it to be. You might be rightly indignant about this predatory creature complicit in the deaths of hundreds of children across human history that has chosen to allow the world to act as it does when clearly reality can be whatever is wished. There isn't really much to summarize here. Madoka Magica does a wonderful and compelling job of depicting a hard decision in the face of world-shattering stakes. Along the way, it proposes a world in which science might stop working in the face of somebody's wish for a cheesecake that violates thermodynamics. Horrifying though the notion is, it's just one side of the issue, the other being depiction of self-sacrifice as necessary. Fatalistic to be sure, but then Madoka does overcome the doom of all magical girls in the end, so it's not all bad. An enjoyable story and well worth the effort of seriously thinking about. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'm eager to know what angles you think are important to consider and why. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. In my next video, I'll be taking a break from anime to discuss plans for the channel, new types of content I plan to make, and I will finally explain the significance of the name, the Trans-Neptunian Panic Zone. So stay tuned.